Hi there, it's Sharon Brandon, and thanks for joining me today. Today I'm playing around with the brand new May 2025 card kit. This is called Beautiful and Curious, and I'll give you a quick overview of the supplies, but what I'm going to attempt to do today is just make a bunch of cards using mainly just the supplies in the kit. So I'm going to go through really quickly and show you what is in this kit. The first thing in this kit, or the main thing, is this Beautiful and Curious stamp set. So this stamp set includes so many great images for spring. There's the butterflies and birds, all these flowers, some little bits of script and number images, and these are right up my alley for creating collage type cards. The next thing that's included in the kit is some paper from the Tim Holtz Ideology Wallflower collection. Now I have the whole collection, so I'm just putting all of my papers out to use, but you'll get in your kit 6 sheets, assorted sheets from this pack, and these are what the sheets look like. So you'll get some combination of these. The next thing that you'll get in this kit is 1 sheet of the Simon Says Stamp Lucky Sentiment strips. And you'll also get, I'll just kind of pull these out of order, these Simon Says Stamp Deco Foil transfer sheets. And these are in the copper color. So I'm definitely going to do something with these together. And then you have different papers. So you'll get one envelope. This is a Simon Says Stamp A2 envelope in metallic khaki. So great for mailing one of your special cards out or giving it to someone. Then you'll get a half sheet of this brand new Simon Says Stamp Ice Vellum. And you can see it's a beautiful weight of vellum. It's got this really cool like icy quality to it. And that's going to be perfect for just making your card have a little shine. The next couple of things that we have are the rest of the papers. So we have Simon Says Stamp 100-pound cardstock. This color is steel. There's also ivory. And there's a piece of Nina Solar White. The last item in the kit supplies before I get to the colorants and stuff is this dotted diamond embossing folder. And this embossing folder is a free gift for subscribers only. If you want to follow along and make the cards with me today, you can certainly use any other embossing folder that you have in your stash. And then here are just the other bits and bobs that are in the kit. So there's a mini archival ink in black soot, which is going to be great for some of the techniques that you can do with distress watercolor crayons. And you get 4 assorted distress crayons in your kit. The ones that I received are Peel's Paint, Stormy Sky, Abandoned Coral, and Fossilized Amber. And you'll get a water brush pen. So this is just a water brush with a pretty thin tip, and you're just going to go ahead and fill it up with water. You'll just unscrew the pen. I went ahead and filled mine up with water, and then you'll go ahead and just screw it back on. And just a note, to unscrew it, I feel like it's going the opposite way of how I would want it to go, and to screw it on, I'm actually turning it counterclockwise and then putting the cap back on. So I just wanted to point that out to you because I had a little trouble with that, figuring that out at first. So again, for unscrewing it, I turned it clockwise, and then for screwing it back together, I turned it counterclockwise. And the very last thing that's included in the kit is just 12 inches of this May Arts, and if you're a card maker, you should be familiar with this May Arts Ivory Twine. So we'll go ahead and incorporate that on one of our cards too. So just to show you, when I get kits like this, what I do is I just took out a piece of paper, I kind of drew rectangles, made myself some notes of some of the things that I want to use. And I thought of some other supplies that I have in my studio that I would want to add to this. So one of the things I love to use with distress crayons is Collage Medium. So I'm going to grab that. And then also, since we're using this copper foil, and I think I'm going to emboss my sentiments with that, I'm going to use some distressed foundry wax, and this is in the color Statue. And I'll be splattering this right onto my card. So in order to do that, I'll mix it with alcohol. And when we get to that card, I'll show you exactly what I do. So those are just the other things that I grabbed. So I have some distressed collage medium, if you have that, or any other matte medium, some foundry wax. You can use any color paint or you know, anything metallic, but I just thought that would be a nice touch. And if you are using the foundry wax, I would recommend using some alcohol with it. It will just help it to splatter a little bit more effectively. So let's take a look at the papers and kind of get our cards straightened out. I'm going to keep the stamps out here just to have an idea. I have my little sketches that I've done. I'll just kind of look and see what's in the stamp set, like what I think will go nicely with some of the stamps that I'm going to use. And your kit will have 6 different pieces, so you'll kind of have to play around with what you want to use. But I'm just going to page through all of my wallflower papers. So I'll get my papers aside. I'll open up my stamps. And then the other thing that I want to do before just getting into the card making are 2 things. I'm going to take a couple of pieces of paper and take this embossing folder and run it through. And I'm going to use distressed watercolor cardstock for that. And the last thing I'm going to take out is just this copper deco foil and the sentiment strip sheet. And since these are printed with toner, they're perfect for foiling. So we'll go ahead and just foil the whole sheet and then decide which sentiments we want to use. Now I'll just wait for the ink machine to heat up. So it looks like it's heating up. And then what I'll do is just take my piece of foil and put it with the shiny side up right over my sentiments here. And then I'm going to just stick it into the carrier sheet. So I'm going to stick it into the carrier sheet. And then I'm going to run it right through. And I'm just putting the seam side, so the side that's closed up, in first. So I can move this out of the way. Let me just turn this off and get it out of the way. And I'll go ahead and just take our sheet out of the carrier and then slowly peel back. You'll see everything is copper colored now. So we have sentiments ready to go. So here are the pieces that I've run through with the embossing folder, and you can see the beautiful texture on these, even on the reverse side. So maybe we'll use one with the bumpy side up and then one with the bumpy side in and do 2 different techniques. I love using embossing folders with distressed crayons. So I'm going to show you one of my favorite ways to use them. And in order to do that, we're going to prep this piece by just adding a coat of Distress Collage Medium. So I'm going to get my nonstick craft sheet, and I like to use just a flat brush for this. So I'm going to use one of these Ranger flat brushes. Make sure that you also just have some water to rinse your brush off in. And I'm not doing a super thick coat. I just want to make sure that I get the entire thing covered. And you'll see when we do the technique with the crayons that we'll do that last, but you'll see that it just allows everything to blend so much more smoothly over the surface. So just go ahead and give the entire thing a nice coat. Set this aside to dry, and of course make sure that you go ahead and set your brush in water or go clean your brush off at this point so it doesn't dry up with Distress Matte Medium, or you're going to have one very solid brush. For the first card, I'm going to be adding one more supply in, and that will be Antique Linen Distress Ink, but you can use anything that you have that's similar. I'm thinking for this card, I'm going to try to keep them all pretty simple, but just to create a tone-on-tone background, and then use this piece right here with these butterflies as like an accent strip. So I'm going to just figure out how that's going to look first. Let me move these things out of the way here. I'm going to keep the butterflies pretty close to the edge. And I'll just cut on this side, and then I'll figure out exactly, I think that's about even. And then I'll figure out exactly about where on my card I want this to fall. So I'm going to just trim a little bit off of the bottom, probably like where this, right underneath this Y, and then make it as wide as the card. So just trim it right here under the Y. And then I'm going to want this piece to be 4 1/4. And if you get different papers, you can find something that's similar or something that you want to use for an accent. So this is what I'm thinking. I'm going to put this here. I'm going to do a tone on tone background, and then I'm going to add a little sentiment, I think, right in here. So the first thing I'll do is just create the background. And since we have butterflies here, I thought it'd be fun to use the other 2 butterflies. Start just by stamping one of the big butterflies first, kind of stamping it like off center on my panel. It's probably about where I'm going to keep this piece. So I'll go ahead and stamp this one here. And then I'm going to work around and build up the rest of my pattern. So I started with the bigger one. I'll go ahead and work some smaller ones in. Just kind of tilt them different ways as well. And just to bring everything together, I'll take an ink blending tool and go ahead and just ink the edges of this paper. And then I think for a sentiment on here, I just want something small. So maybe this one that says "Believe in Daydream." And I want to keep with this look here. So I am going to use just a strip of ivory paper to stamp this on. I'll just cut a small piece. I think that looks good. And this is archival ink, so I'm just going to give it a quick, just go ahead and trim this sentiment. I'm going to trim it pretty close. And then I'm also just going to ink the edge of this to bring it all together. I'm going to add it to the bottom. Just going to put the tape, the double-sided tape right down here to help hold my twine on. Go ahead and just put my piece of twine there. And then I'll just add the sentiment right there. And that for the next one, I think I'm going to incorporate just a piece of the embossed folder, but I'm going to use this back piece. So I'm not using the part that's bumpy on the top. I'm using the back piece, and this is just the plain one. And I think I just want to use a portion of it for the card. So I'm just going to cut this. I cut it down to about 2 inches. And then for the stamping on this one, I want to use this kind of flower image, but I'm not sure if I actually want to see those roots on my card. And I think for this piece, I'm going to cut it down even smaller, just to 1 3/4. So I'll set this up. This piece, essentially, I'll use to cover up any of those roots. And I'll set this up kind of right in the middle. What I'll do is stamp it 3 times. So I'm going to scribble out some of the fossilized amber, a little bit of the abandoned coral, some of the stormy sky, and then, of course, a little bit of peeled paint. And I'll take one of my distress sprayer. You have a water brush, but I like to just have these really nice and watery. And then I'll go ahead and take the water brush. So I'll start with just adding a little bit more water to that, kind of squeezing it and getting some more water. And I'm going to use yellow in the middle. And I'm going to do that down here on my textured panel. Just a little bit. And also on the flowers or tree or whatever this is in the middle, I think it's just some flowers. I'm just loosely coloring them in. So just adding little bits of that distressed crayon there. Go ahead and wash it out. Do the same thing on the left. And again, I'm just wanting it to be a little bit more watery. So I'll just add this abandoned coral color. I'm just kind of dotting it on where the flowers are. You can definitely be a little more precise if you like. This is how I like to do it. And then I'm also gonna just blend some of that color here into this panel. And you can blend the colors together where they meet. You don't have to cover the whole thing. But just definitely adding, you can bring some more yellow back in if you like. Just kind of blending those colors together. Add a little more yellow over to this side while I have it. And then of course for the last one, I'm just going to do the same thing. Make it a little bit more watery and just adding some stormy sky. And just add that a little bit more water. So just squeezing this brush. And giving it like a fun mixed media look. And you'll see once we blend this yellow and blue, you're going to pick up and have like a little bit of that green color, a little bit of orange. And then finally, I'm not going to put any down here. I think we have enough color on this panel, but just picking up really just a little bit on the tip of the brush, get peeled paint and kind of painting in some of the branches, and do that on all of them just to make it cohesive and have that running through each one. And then this will need a sentiment. So I'm just going to pull a sentiment from maybe we'll use this one. Okay, and I think we're ready to assemble this one. This should just need a little bit. I'm going to use my heat tool. It's still a little damp to dry it. So I've added some foam dots to the back of the panel that I colored with the distressed crayons. I'll go ahead and add that to the card. And then I'll also do the same thing for the sentiment. So just really easy, simple, and super fun to color in. For the third card, I wanted to use the other piece of this actually, and get some of this pink and some of these really beautiful flowers into the background of my card. So I've cut this steel panel. This is 3 3/4 by 5. And then I'll just make this a bit smaller. So I'm going to cut this one to 3.5. And I think what I'll do is just cut some on from either side, just to kind of even it out a bit. So 3.5 by, make it 4 3/4. Let's see how that works. I'll maybe even take another, make that 3 1/4. And then I'm going for this one. I'm just going to adhere this panel and line it right up to the top of the card. I think for this one as well, I'm going to start using, going to use one of these foiled sentiments. So I'm going to keep those two pieces, the I am the luckiest person to have a friend like you. And then we'll add a focal point to this card as well. And I think we can keep it pretty simple. I'll go ahead and just add this big butterfly, and we can stamp that in just black archival ink. So I'm going to stamp it on me in a cardstock. I have a little piece right here. For this, we can go ahead and cut it out as well. Just going to go ahead and color in my butterfly here using the distress crayons. do the same thing with this abandoned coral. I'm just going to start from this edge and then kind of blend them together. Since we have this antique linen-y color in here, I'm going to go ahead and just go over this butterfly. So let me get these things out of the way. Keep this crown here, but I'm just going to go over the butterfly a little bit, kind of distress it, and still leave some white peeking through. I think I'm going to put them like this. This is also where I'm going to bring in this statue foundry wax. So you want to shake it up really well. There's a mixing ball. I'm just adding a little bit here. To make it splatter, I'm going to add just a bit of alcohol. And then I want to keep everything kind of on this paper. I don't really want it on the side, so you can do a couple of things. I'll just use a scrap paper to kind of block it off. I could have done this beforehand, but I didn't. So I just want it to be on this panel and nothing else. And you'll see, kind of starts moving around. I'm going to just add that onto the card. I'm also just going to add a little bit here, just little bits onto my butterfly, just a couple of areas. And then what I'm going to do is just take my heat tool to it. You're going to see that this foundry wax will start turning colors, and I'll bring it up close so you can kind of see it. And then I'll also do it to where I added just some spots on the butterfly, and you'll see that as well. Now we're ready to work with this one that has distressed crown. So this is coated with a layer of the distressed collage medium. I'm just going to give it a mist of water. And then for the crowns, since it has the collage medium on it, I'm going to go ahead and just start adding bits of color onto this. Now I like to blend it in with my finger. You could use a paintbrush, but since it has the matte medium on it, it's going to blend really, really smoothly. So same thing, I'm just going to pick up some water and then just blend around what I have here. You can really keep blending and layering until you get a look that you really like. So for me, that's kind of like a distressed sort of tie-dye color. Go ahead and clean off my mat here. I'm just going to go over it with a baby wipe, and what that's going to do is remove just a little of the color, but if I'm just putting my finger right there, kind of goes over on the raised parts. So it has some really cool color movement, some texture. Put the caps back on my crayons, and I'll go ahead and just give this a quick dry with the heat tool. And what I am going to do for this one is just trim this down. So I want to trim it to 3 3/4 by 5. And then I'm going to add this just onto a note card. So I'm going to center it in the middle of the note card. And I'm using distressed watercolor cardstock. So what I'm trying to do here is just loosely color in the flowers. So let's try to make them red on the outsides. Maybe even some blue into these centers. Covered. I'm going to just move that out of the way. Just give this a couple of mists of water. So I think that's a little bit better. So everything is colored in now. I'm going to go ahead and trim that down to size. About 3 by 4. And then I think I can use a piece of this steel color, which would look really nice. Before I do that, I think I just want to add a sentiment over my flowers. We'll use the Distress Archival ink again. Go ahead and adhere that to this piece of steel cardstock. And then to adhere this one, I'm just going to use some double-sided tape so it sticks nicely. So now on this card, we've used the crayons for coloring the image. We have a really cool textured background that we made with matte medium. And we have time to just make one more card. So for this card, I'm just going to come in and cut about 1 inch off the side. Then I'll look through the papers that I selected and pick just a fun pattern for the side of the card. I'm going to have a nice piece of paper sticking out from the edge. And I also want to keep this floral on here. So I think I'm going to tilt it for this. I'm going to move it up though, because I want to have room for the sentiment. So I'm going to tilt it so it's up here, like it's coming off of the card. And then I should have room for a sentiment at the bottom. Okay, so I think our flower image looks good now. And just to kind of bring this together, I'm going to use just a little of the archival ink, this black soot, just a tiny bit. And I'm going to ink the edges. I also want to put a sentiment on here, so I think I'm actually going to do that before I adhere everything together. And then there's one other sentiment that we didn't use here from this set, and it says, "Be your beautiful self." So I'm going to go ahead and add that. Okay, so now that we have everything stamped, I have our piece of paper here. Just going to put this in my score pal here. This will be the bottom, just so it lines up nicely. And it'll look like that. If you have one and you want to do it, I'm also just going around the corners of this a little bit. This is a 1/4 inch. But I think I'm even going to go for a 1/2 inch. So let's just do that here. You can see I did get some smudges up here that I'll want to fix. I'm going to go ahead and just ink the edges here where we trim the corners off. But for this, a couple of things are going to go on. I'm going to color in these images again with the water brush and the distress crowns. This time I'm going to make the flowers yellow. Kind of just keeping everything yellow here. Maybe just a tiny bit. I'll just pick it up right with my pencil and blend it together. So I'm not getting like too much red in there, just a little bit of a shadow. Let's see what colors are in our paper. We have some green and some blue in the paper. So what I might do for the blue is just outline the image. Just a really soft outline. Just around the whole image. And then of course, just picking up a little, just get a little more water in there. A little bit of this shabby shutters just to get this nice green color into the stems. And then finally what I'm going to do with this adding a little water with my water brush. I'm going to go ahead with this one card that was a mistake and just add some splatter here. Go ahead and clean off my brush. And then just add maybe a little bit of green splatter as well. And then finally, just pick up the yellow that I have left here. Go ahead and just give that a quick dry. And it looks a little plain. I still think I have some, just add that piece of blue just to bring everything together. So the last thing that I'm going to do here is just going to do it the way I usually do, and I just have it hanging off, but I'm going to stamp that on the envelope. I missed a little spot in the middle, so I'll go ahead and try to touch that up. And I'll dry that with my heat tool and make sure to dry it really, really well. But now you have an envelope to match your card. So here are the 5 final cards that we've made with this card kit using everything in it and just a couple of other supplies. So this one, we just used everything from the card kit. We did some stamping, we did some coloring with the distress crayons, making them really watery, a little splatter with that watery mixture that we made, and then coordinating color paper, and also stamping on this envelope with ACRYLIC to match our card. For this one, we used that embossing folder where we put matte medium on top, colored with the distress crayons, and then we're able to blend the crayon very smoothly on top of the matte medium, and then just stamping our image with the crayon, making sure not to color the stamp too hard to get the pigment on the stamp, but just not to break up a lot of chunks of the crayons there. And then for this one, some more coloring with the crayons. This one, we're using the inverse part of that embossing folder and a very watery mixture just to bring out the color. And then for the last 2 butterfly cards, this one we did some foiling on our sentiment strips with the copper foil. And then I added the statue foundry wax. So we have a lot of cool shiny splatter as well that matches with our sentiment. And just adding a little bit of that statue foundry wax to our colored image as well. And then for the last one, no coloring at all, just some tone on tone stamping with some of the antique linen distress ink, cutting out a paper strip, inking all the edges, a tiny sentiment and a tiny little bow, and 5 cards with 5 very different looks, all using one stamp set and very minimal supplies. So I hope you had fun creating along with me today. If you got the card kit and try out some of these looks, I hope you share them. And thanks so much for spending time with me today, and thank you for watching.
Hi there, I'm Heidi, Simon's mama and founder at SimonsSaysStamp.com. Thank you so much for watching our video. If you like what you just saw, be sure to press the thumbs up and subscribe to see more great content.